Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming back to another IBRACORP video. In today's video, we're going to cover the next most important topic in our setup, securing our apps and our server with Authentik and applying two-factor authentication over our apps. Now, the app we're going to use today is Jellyfin because we're on a roll with getting Jellyfin out there to the public. It's more important than ever we speak about security, especially after the recent Plex breach that was announced a few days ago. So for those coming into the Jellyfin sphere, welcome, and we're going to show you how to lock down your server by using Authentik and by applying two-factor authentication. This also hits on the security element that we're trying to push here at IBRACORP as we develop more and more content for you all. So I hope this one answers all your questions. Before I start, I want to give a big shout out to North, one of our community leaders and our IBRACORP team members in the Discord. He's been immensely helpful in getting me this working. To be honest with you guys, there was a lot of back and forth to get this going, to get an understanding of the documentation provided by Authentik as well as Jellyfin. What you're seeing here is the extremely condensed, straightforward A to Z pathway to get this working. Without further ado and without stuffing around, let's just get stuck into it. Authentik is a all one-stop shop solution when it comes to authentication and authorization to allow you to get set up and apply security to various different methods and apps. It is a beast of an application, so it has a huge range of various different use cases. Today's use case, we're looking at LDAP as well as multi-factor authentication, but it can do a lot more. You can see here on the website, you can replace various different tools you may already have in your stack with Authentik, and it will handle a variety of different security measures. Probably one of the best, but leave your comments down below if you do want to see us do OIDC or SSO across apps, and we'll touch that one next. With that said, let's just move on and get on getting this working. All right, guys, so I'm going to show you the installation of the Authentik stack and everything we need here on Unraid. I put everything in the stack up here. You see the first 5 apps, and they're in a very set order. In order of operation and dependency, we need to start by thinking of database goes up first, followed by our Redis database as well, followed by Authentik itself. Then Authentik has a worker that needs to run. And in our case today, because we're using LDAP, we'll need to run the LDAP container as well. So it goes in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, now that you've got the overarching stack in your head, let's go to the apps and start actually installing them. The first thing we're going to install is Postgres. So they go to the App Store. All right, and we're just going to search for Postgres, hit enter. Now, my recommendation based on all the information I could find is either go with Postgres SQL 16 or the Postgres SQL Alpine installation. We went with the Alpine installation. It's the official container as well. So go ahead and click install on that. Okay, so here we are on the install screen for the Postgres container. Okay, now by itself, it's not going to be doing anything special right now, but we want to make sure we get all the details correct here as we start going through the process. I would highly recommend that you have a notepad just on the side with, really important things like tokens and passwords as we go through this. It's going to make your life a little easier. Obviously, make sure you destroy that document once you're done so that you're not leaving, plain text passwords on your computer. Now, one of the biggest things that also gets overlooked on Unraid is the ability to flick the advanced view, which you can see just up here. You can do that on pretty much every container, and it'll open up a couple of different extra fields, right, that you can configure if you need to. Now, for the purpose of Postgres, there's nothing in the advanced I need to worry about, so we'll just untick that. And let's start from the top. With the name, I like using particular names, okay? And it makes things not just easier to identify, but easier to tag as we're building out our host name based or DNS based linkages between containers rather than referring to IPs, okay? I'm going to call this Authentik_DB. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. I can look at that. I know exactly what it's for and not overthink it. Next thing I'll do is apply it to our custom Docker network. Did a short, quick video on custom Docker networks, why you want to use it. I'll drop that in the description for you as well. Put that on your custom Docker network. You come down, you'll get to the port. Now, unless you're already using an instance of Postgres, you shouldn't need to change that default port to anything. So if you're not using Postgres already, leave it. If you are already running another Postgres installation, check what port that one is using and then make sure this one's different, okay? But remember that if you change it, wherever you're referring to this Postgres moving forward, that you use that same port. Now, again, in terms of keeping, some nice data hygiene, I want to keep everything related to Authentik. So I'm changing the database name rather than the default of Postgres. I'm going to change it to Authentik, the database user to Authentik as well. And then I'm going to put our custom password in here. Default is change me. So please, for the love of God, change that password. Don't leave it default. Now, once you're all happy with that, go ahead and hit apply, and this bad boy is going to start up. All right, so you've got your database container running. It should be running and ready. If you just left click and go to logs, when you first start up for the first time, it'll basically say, initializing and then ready for connections. Now, the next thing we need to do is get an instance of Redis going. Redis is like a cache database, really helps speed up transactional data. So go over to your app store again. I'm going to look for Redis. Now, for those following along with Docker Compose, we're looking at this app store, but they all pull from Docker Hub. So just use the same images if you want to follow what we're doing. And we have the official container right here. All you have to do is go ahead and click install. So we get to the Redis install screen. Again, I'm going to give it a name that makes sense. So Authentik_Redis. The repository, I don't need to change. I'm going to put it on that same custom Docker network. Because we're using a custom Docker network, containers can talk to each other via their host name or DNS name. So we can go ahead and do that and then leave your default port. Again, as I explained earlier, if you're using it already somewhere else, then you would need to change this. Now, unlike the Postgres container, there is actually an advanced option we're going to set here. If we just toggle the advanced view and we go underneath post arguments, and I'd like to thank one of our viewers on a previous video who actually provided this information to our community, so I appreciate that. I've gone ahead and incorporated it here. In the post arguments, set the Redis-server -- or -- require pass space and then the password you want to set. For those worried, this container is already blown away by the time you've seen this video, so don't stress. But obviously in your case, don't let anybody see that password. So what that's allowing us to do is set a password on the Redis container rather than just leaving it unauthenticated, really increasing that security for ourselves. So now that we've got that set up, you can go ahead and click apply and start that container up. All right, guys, we're looking pretty good. So we've got our database running. We also have our Redis instance running as well, and they're both ready and waiting. So there are our two main dependencies. That means we can get stuck into Authentik. So again, back to the App Store. Now you're going to see a variety of different options here. We've got our own templates and our team's been working hard on trying to clean up the repository of templates. However, Zurex has done a great job of getting the templates up. Doesn't matter which one you want to go with. We're going to go with the Authentik one that we've put up, as well as the worker. However, for the LDAP, go ahead and use Zurex's one there. Let's just start with Authentik itself and we'll go from there. So click on Authentik. Yep, all looks good. Go ahead and click install and we'll get to the template. Okay, here's the template for the Authentik container. And this is where we want to put all of the details that we've kind of already started collecting. And we start getting into our ports. Now, again, unless you're already using these, leave these as the default. If you are using them elsewhere, change them. Now you can see here, Redis host. Rather than me typing in the IP address for Redis, I actually just type in the container name. That's it. Because they're on the same custom Docker network, IBRANET, I don't have to go ahead and type in IP addresses, okay? So if anything happened and the IP address changed, don't have to worry about it. Then our Postgres. So again, we're putting in the name of the host here, which is Authentik_DB. Then the Postgres user. Now we set that up earlier as just Authentik. The database name, we also set that as Authentik. Then we get down to the DB password. Obviously just put in the password that you created on the PostgreSQL container. Error reporting, I'd advise leaving that on, especially as we're starting off. And now you'll see the app key. You generate this key, go ahead and use any sort of key generator that you find online that's long and secure and drop it in here. Then it's the Redis password. So that's the password we put into that extra parameters field earlier on the Redis template. We also have a path here for custom templates. Now you want to set this to app data if you can, underneath the Authentik folder, and it just allows us to save those items under the app data location. And then there's also media. Now this is going to be things like icons or any other kind of pictures. You want those saved, put them underneath the Authentik folder as well. That's pretty much it for Authentik's container. You can pretty much fire it up now and away you go. What we'll also do now is install the worker. So type in Authentik again, find the worker container. Find the one that you want to use. We're going to use our IBRACORP one. Go ahead and click install. All right, so here we are on the template for the Authentik worker. Nothing too surprising compared to what we've just done. So go ahead and set all those details again, including our container names, our database details, our key. Make sure this key matches the Authentik container key that we just created earlier, and set the same locations where possible. The only difference here is we've got a certs location. Make sure you've got that there too. Then we've got our templates folder and then the Redis password. Put it all in and fire it up. Now with all of that set up, we're not ready to get the LDAP one configured just yet. So what we need to do here is go back to your Authentik container and you'll see there's a URL here that we can go to. If you're wanting to go to port 9000, it's the HTTP port. So just make sure you've got HTTP at the start. If you're going to the 9443, it'll be HTTPS here at the start. Okay, but pretty much put your IP address for your server, followed by one of these ports and the rest of the flow here that you can see, and it'll take you to first setup screen for Authentik. All right, so we've gone to that address and here is the first initial setup screen for Authentik. And this one is going to be really important that you get all your details correct. It's for the username of AK admin, as you can see here. Type in your email address, put in your password, repeat that password, and then hit continue. Now this is like your root account for Authentik, so make it something secure. And the first thing we want to do is start creating some users. So before you do anything else, go down to directory on the left-hand side and go to users. Now what's recommended is you create a new admin user first, okay? So that we're not signing in under AK admin for everything. We don't really want to be using that default account. So what you want to do is go create, pick a username, pick a name, leave it as internal, is active, and then go ahead and click create. That'll create just a normal user for Authentik. Once you've created the user, you can then click on the username. Once you've created the user, then you can assign them to a necessary group. Now in this case, I want myself to be an admin inside of Authentik. So I'll go to groups and I'll go to add to existing group, hit the plus icon, and you can see all the different groups we have. I'm going to go ahead and add them to Authentik admins, which my user already is, as you can see here. And now, congratulations, I'm an admin. So once you've created your new account, go ahead and sign out at the top right there. All right, so now I'm in as my admin account. That is not the default admin account. It's my admin account. It's separate. I can start doing some work. So one of the first things we'll do again is come down to users, and we'll actually start creating some users in here as well as a service account. So all I've done in this case is created a colorfully named account called John Connor and another one called Mary Jane. Once I've created the users, I've just left it at that for now. Now go to groups, and here you can create some additional groups if you wish. If you want to separate your Jellyfin admins from Jellyfin users, go ahead and create the two groups there. For LDAP, we want to create a bind user. This is the user that LDAP is going to use to refer back to Authentik and perform the search for the user that's trying to sign in. Typically, you don't want that to be individual users themselves. You create a special bind account, and that's what performs the queries. So in order to do that, go to users like we did before, and go ahead and click create service account. Create a name. In this case, we're going to call it LDAP service. We're going to leave create group enabled. For utmost security, we're going to leave the expiring toggle on, and that means the token will be rotated once that expiry is received. So set that to whatever you think is relevant on an expiry date. Okay, you can set it a year, for example, if that works for you, and then go ahead and click create. So now you can see our service account's been set up and it provided us a token. Okay, once it creates that token for you, it won't show it again. So just make sure you put that on the little side notepad you might have until we're ready to move on. Now, the next thing we're going to do is set up our flows and stages. This is what allows us to configure the tokens or the one-time password apps for users to be able to set up and actually log in to Jellyfin with. So let's go to flows and stages on the left-hand side, go to stages, and then go ahead and click create. In here, select identification stage. We're going to give it a name of LDAP-identification-stage. For the user fields, we'll select username and email. You can select UPN if it's relevant for your purpose. For our purpose today, we don't need it, so I'm just going to leave it. And then go ahead and hit finish. Now, while we're still on this screen, we can go ahead and click create again, but this time we'll select password stage. So scroll down until you find password stage, click next, and give it the name LDAP-authentication-password. We can leave all the defaults set and go ahead and click finish. And now we're going to create one more stage. So go ahead and click create and find user login stage. Go ahead and click next, and we'll name this LDAP-authentication-login. You can leave all the defaults once again and go ahead and click finish. So now we've created our stages, we can go over to flows here on the left and go ahead and click create. We're going to name this LDAP-authentication-flow, put that in the title as well. Designation, we're going to set that to authentication. Now, I couldn't find a set answer in the documentation for the authentication field here. By default, it just sits on no requirement. However, I've noticed that if flow won't work without this step regardless. So not sure whether we require it or not. I'll leave it up to you guys to help me find out. Once you finish putting all that in, go ahead and click create. In my case, I've already got it. So I've got update as the option. Then you'll see the flow here in the list. Go ahead and click on it. Go up to stage bindings at the top. So to create these, click on bind existing stage. Set the order to 10 on the first one, being LDAP identification stage. We set that to order of 10. We'll leave it on evaluate when flow is planned, and you can leave the other one ticked as well. Go ahead and click create. The next one we create is the default authentication login. We select that as the stage and we set the order to 30. Now, once you've done that, go back in here and beside the LDAP identification stage, click on edit stage. In here, set the password stage to LDAP authentication password and click update. Cool. So now with all that done, we've created our multi-factor kind of flow setup, and it's ready to be used into a provider and an application. Now we can set up our actual LDAP application and provider. Go to applications on the left, select application and click on create with provider. And simply call it LDAP, hit next, and then you'll get the option to pick what kind of provider you can use. Authentik supports an awesome number of providers here. For our purpose, we're going with LDAP. So click on that and click next. Now we're on the provider screen. We can select either cached or direct binding. Now, while you're first testing, and thanks to North for this suggestion, it's useful to have it on direct, and you can always change it later. Otherwise, if you're pretty confident in yourself, just leave it as cached. The explanations are all there. I'm trying to save us a bit of time. Now, under the search mode, you'll see code-based MFA support. With the way we're setting everything up, we want that enabled. Now you can see here it's all default. I haven't needed to change it, so you can just leave it as is and click next. Don't need to set anything here. Go ahead and click next and then submit. Now, once you've done that, you should be able to see your new application here, and it's connected to a provider that we've just set up as well. So go over to providers and you'll see the provider for LDAP. Select it on the name there and go to permissions. Now, under the permissions here, we're going to assign a new user. Find that LDAP service account that we created and then only select search full LDAP directory. Do not give it the other permissions, they aren't necessary. Go ahead and click assign. Once you do that, you should see the LDAP service here in the list, and you can see we've given it permission to search the full directory. And now we're nearing the end of the process. We need to create an LDAP outpost. So to start that off, go to outposts underneath applications. Now in the outpost, go ahead and click create and give it a name of LDAP. The type is obviously going to be LDAP, so select that. And we can see here the applications for LDAP, which is the one we created earlier. Go ahead and move that over to the right so that it's selected and click on create. All right, now that we've set everything up, we kind of need to actually set up our two-factor authentication for that user, right? Because otherwise it's not going to work. So let's go down to directory and users. We can see all of our users there, right? If we click on Mary Jane, who's going to be our test user today, I've set her password manually. So you can go ahead and click set password, create the password you want them to have. All right. And then in a incognito window or in private window, let's go to Authentik and sign in as that user. Okay. So I've gone to Authentik. I've typed in the username Mary Jane and the password that I set for her. And then in the top right, we'll go to settings. And we'll go to MFA devices. In the top here, go to enroll and select your TOTP device. Now, if you want to use something like Duo for push authentication as well, you can actually do that. I prefer using codes for this scenario, but it does support the ability for us to use Duo as well, which is awesome, right? So in my case, I'm using a TOTP device. It's going to get you to obviously scan that QR, go through the motions of adding an application in your authenticator app, whatever authenticator you prefer. It's going to ask you for the code, put that code in, and you should be enrolled. Now you can see I have my device enrolled already. So what you'll see here is deployment info on the right hand side next to the outpost. Select that. In here, it's going to give you your Authentik host and it's going to give you your Authentik token. Now, depending which way you sign into Authentik, the host will change, which is fine. If you're seeing the local address, that's perfectly fine. Use that instead. You'll also have the option to copy the token. So click on copy token. It's in our clipboard. Close this. And now we can go back to our Unraid server. Okay, now that we're back on Unraid, we can go to apps, search for Authentik again, and you'll see that Zurex here has uploaded a template for the Authentik LDAP container. So thank you to them for doing that. You can go ahead and click install. Okay, so here we are on the Authentik LDAP container template. Here's our Authentik host. As I said earlier, it doesn't matter if we're using the local address, that's okay. Here's where we put that token in that we just copied. So paste that in. Authentik insecure, that setting must come from the deployment info screen as well. So whatever you set there, match it here. And then we have the 2 ports. Now, while you're testing, you might find it useful to left click and open the logs for the LDAP service. Okay, it's going to come in handy while you're trying to test whether the user account will work. Okay, so I'm going to leave that off to the side while we go now to Jellyfin and set up the Jellyfin side of things. Cool, guys. So once you come back to Jellyfin in our admin dashboard, which I showed off in our last Jellyfin video just last week, we installed the LDAP Auth plugin. Okay, you get that from the catalog. Go ahead and install it. Once you've installed it, the easiest way to restart the server, because you need to restart it for the plugins to be enabled, is just go to dashboard. Once you do that and your server's up and running, come back to my plugins and select LDAP. I'm going to save all of you a lot of heartache that I went through setting this up, so you can pretty much hopefully copy most of this off screen, making the similar changes that's relevant to your server and your environment. But the LDAP server is obviously my server address, and then the LDAP port 636 is what's configured in that LDAP outpost container. You can then tick this option to skip SSL TLS verification, keep going, and now we get into the most important parts of what we're doing. So CN means username, CN equals LDAP service, that matches the service account we created. They live in the OU of users. Pay particular note here, I might just zoom in for everyone to see a bit better. Pay particular note, there's a comma there, then it goes on to the next section, being users, LDAP, followed by our domain that we've set up. Now the LDAP bind user password is that really long token that Authentik should have given you when you created the service account for LDAP service. And then we have the base DN, okay? So that's the absolute base that we want it searching for across the board. And that's usually this part here. And as you can see, I've matched that up. Once you do that, stop at this point. Don't go further down the page yet, okay? Just stop at that point and test it. So if you hit save and test, you'll either get this connect success, bind success, and then a search, and it will find a whole bunch of different things. Or it will say, you know, unable to bind, some sort of issue like that. If you're not getting this to work, don't bother going forward, okay? This test allows you to test everything from this point upwards. So it allows you to kind of narrow down your troubleshooting window. If that doesn't work, just make sure you're checking things like, all right, do we have the right server address? We're using the right port. We're using the right bind user. We're checking this spot here, which you can get from Authentik, to make sure it matches what we're using. And we've got the right password. We've tested it and now it works. So hopefully you have a lot of ease doing that part and you can move on. So now we get into a little bit of the nitty gritty. The LDAP search filter. There are many different ways to write these queries, ways that you can really narrow down what kind of users you'll want to come up. For my purpose, to just bring up all users in Authentik, we're applying object class equals user. That's it. Search attributes that it will look for that user with. It's going to check the user ID, the email address, display names. This uniquely identifies the user, so UID. So CN is fine, user password is fine. We're not going to change any of this. This was all default. We come down, and here is if you wanted particular users to be admins, and we create an admin group in Authentik, and we put a particular user in that group, we can tell the search filter that anyone within the group, admins, for example, becomes an admin in Jellyfin. Me personally, I prefer just getting the users in and then I can assign them as an admin once they're in here. You get another testing screen at this point, so we can actually type in a testing name. So one of the users we created. So let's go with Mary Jane and we'll go ahead and click test. So the first test is testing this part here with our user filters. Okay, and it's telling us that 7 users were found matching the filters we provided. Now we've put in a test username of Mary Jane. We'll go ahead and test that particular user. So click search. You can see, all right, it's found a user. That's the CN. That's the OU, DC, DC, DC. All looks good. The next option that you want to enable is enable user creation, right? So when the user is imported from LDAP, it'll create the user here in Jellyfin for us. That's what we want. Then you get library access. So when a user does sign in, what kind of access do you want them to get in Jellyfin? So if you don't want them to get anything by default, you just want them to be able to sign in, but then not have access, and then you set it manually, untick that option. Or alternatively, you might want to select 1 or 2 or whatever number of libraries you wish for them to have. Now, if all is good, we pretty much save it at that point, and you've tested this thoroughly, you should be right. Now, like I told you earlier, when we test the query, if we have the other window open, as you can see here, so this is where the logs stopped earlier, and then now we've just done those test searches. You can see the LDAP container is being hit by those requests. You can sit here and kind of verify, okay, yep, it's connecting through. You can see the LDAP service account is being used correctly, which is good. Everything looks good. So now that we've created that, we've confirmed that it's working. Now we pretty much test the user signing into Jellyfin. And there's a bit of a trick to this. So I'm going to show you now. Okay, so I'm on my Jellyfin sign-in screen. We're going to go ahead and test our new user, Mary Jane, and see whether she can sign in fine. Now don't forget, we set up that two-factor authentication, right? So I'm going to show you what happens when we type just the password in. We get knocked back straight away, okay? So invalid username or password, can't sign in. Let's check those logs. All right, if we can look at the logs here, see, trying to use that bind username, Mary Jane users, authenticated from session. Cool. All right, that didn't work. Here's how we do it when we have the one-time PIN configured. So type in the password, then put a semicolon, then type in the code from your Authenticator app. And there you go. Thanks, guys, and I'll see you in the next IBRACORP video.